Well, it's time to look back on the last month. And can we say that April has been the most unusual thing we've probably ever experienced and likely to, although this is a new norm. Anyway, looking back, and I suppose there's only one story to talk about with Chris Cave, a freelance journalist who's back on the Isle of Man after... You're heading to the UK, but you decided to lock down here, I think, Chris, is that right?
Yes, I came back just after St. Patrick's Day because I foresaw that the situation in the UK was going to escalate, and I thought I'd be a lot safer confined to my home in the Isle of Man.
Okay, well, there is only one story, unless you've got anything else. But I mean, how are you finding it? I mean, you and me are both doing the daily press conferences, and we're both getting a lot of chit-chat, should we say that politely, that we are asking very odd questions or strange questions or repeating questions. How do you feel it's going, these press conferences?
On the whole, I think the Manx government have done a very good job. As we keep on hearing, these are unprecedented times, and I personally think that the government here acted quickly, acted effectively to prevent what could have been a dire situation, a serious spread of COVID-19 in the Isle of Man, with a death rate spiralling out of control. That hasn't happened, so you do have to commend the Manx government and give them credit where it's due. The difficult thing for us as journalists in this time is we come across as being negative when we're trying to get answers from the ministers, and I think that is where the lines get blurred, really. If you're a member of the public, you're thinking, why are they being so negative? Why are they criticising government all the time? I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think we want to get answers, which plenty of people also want this information, want the answers to these questions. So it's a case of, if the government are doing as good as they can, they will have an answer for the questions that we are putting to them.
Yes, but I mean, the format is we get two questions. We don't necessarily get the retort back either to find out more. I don't know about you, but I think sometimes, and I'm listening to everyone, not just my questions, but you hear an answer, but it means nothing sometimes. There's just nothing in that answer, and it's very frustrating, isn't it?
Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast where we are with these virtual press briefings. You know as well as I do, if you're in the same room as a government minister and you're questioning them on something and you don't get an answer to your question, if they do waffle or manage to say something for a couple of minutes without actually giving you any information or giving any clarity on a matter, you can then continually press them and try and get that answer out of them. And that is the difficulty with just having two questions and not being in that same room. Being in a virtual press briefing it is very easy for them not to give you an answer if they don't have one or if they don't want to give you one.
And saying whatever, 4,000 odd viewers, I think, in the total up everything, because it's on all these different platforms, every different broadcaster. There's an appetite from the public for this forum, isn't there?
And again, credit to the Manx politicians. They are fronting these media briefings every day, on Saturdays and Sundays as well, every day. And you look at other jurisdictions and they're not doing it. And as we keep hearing, and I think it is, you begin to sound like a broken record, these are unprecedented times. Let's not forget the ministers who are in charge in the Isle of Man government. You know, they are humans as well. They've not been in this situation. They didn't expect to be in this situation. And they are giving us answers. They're taking the questions. They don't know what we're going to ask. And they are providing us as best they can with answers to the questions that we have.
And that's one of the myths. Everyone thinks we've been set up and they know all the questions. I tell you what, I'm sure you get the same. I cannot believe my inbox. And I have to say, people, thank you so much for contacting me. I know everyone's been contacted, but people have a thirst for questions. And we are limited in what we can do. But we certainly don't. They don't know what's going to be asked of them, do they?
No, absolutely not. And I think everybody who attends those press briefings will be speaking to people and get questions given to them by various members of the public, because we all have our lives that we want to get back on with, and we have concerns of what this pandemic is bringing. So it is great to hear so much from members of the public saying, can you ask this, can you ask that? It gives you a real barometer of what the main concerns of the Manx public are.
And we do this on Zoom, and the actual ministers can see us asking the questions, but the public don't. They just hear our voices. And I think that can be quite tricky, because I know I come across as quite stroppy, but that's just the way I keep explaining this. That's just my nature. It sounds like that. But if you see the person, I kind of have an open look to me. I'm not being too aggressive, but it comes across sometimes. And I think you have that problem as well. Sometimes you are deemed to be aggressive, like me.
I certainly don't mean to be aggressive if that's how I come across. I think you just each have your own style. If you want to get an answer out of someone and you feel you're not getting that answer, then you do have to press a bit. Yeah, so I think I don't think it's aggressive. I like to think that the relationship between government and the media, if anything, this pandemic has improved that relationship, because we are speaking to each other on a daily basis, and I think they do get to know that certain style, and if they try and fob you off, Paul, they know that you're not going to have it.
And if you're at the bottom of the list, it's quite tricky as well, because there's like maybe 8 people in this press conference now, and it's expanded, and that's another controversy for a lot of people, who should be in the press conference and who shouldn't. But if you're the last questionnaire of the day, you can be kind of left trying to find a question. Do you think maybe it's too many journalists asking questions now? Maybe it should be cut down?
I personally think these daily press briefings now aren't offering us anything new unless there's a major development. You kind of get the feeling we're going around in circles in a way, and there are only so many subjects that can be covered, if you like. So yeah, I think you could look at the number of journalists, but I think as it seems to have been contained, what are we now, at the end of April? At the beginning of the month, there were under 100 cases. Now there's, at the time of recording, 315 positive tests for COVID-19 on the Isle of Man. It's not gone spiralling out of control. So credit to the ministers for fronting the press briefings. I do wonder now whether it is the time to not have press conferences, press briefings every day, because how much information are we getting from them?
Finally, let's go back to the subject matter. I mean, obviously, the big story was this nursing home, and it sort of kept coming out every day about this cluster. It took a bit of extraction to get this information, and that's probably been the biggest story, hasn't it, on this, as far as maybe the UK's side of things is concerned?
Unfortunately, yes, it's the worst affected area in the Isle of Man is Abbotswood Nursing Home in Ballasalla. Many residents there are elderly, vulnerable, and often have underlying health conditions. And as we've been seeing from the reports around the world, if you are elderly, if you do have underlying health conditions, then you are at risk. And unfortunately, I believe we've had 21 deaths from coronavirus in the Isle of Man so far. 18 of those are linked to Abbotswood. So it's definitely the worst affected area. And we're just praying and hoping that everybody there gets the medical assistance and medical help, which hopefully will ensure they recover from the virus. But it's important as well for when they're dealing with this, that they don't allow the virus to spread in the wider community, because that could be catastrophic.
I think another memorable piece for me would be the returnees coming back off the boat to a police escort up to the Comus Hotel and all that. What's your feeling on that?
For me, I largely think the way the government has dealt with the coronavirus pandemic has been largely good. I think the repatriation of island residents who failed to get back to the Isle of Man once the borders were closed has proved to be the most contentious point. The first sailing bringing those Manx residents back was on the 15th of April, I believe. They have to pay a fee of up to £1,000 for travel, accommodation and food. And I think it's a double-edged sword. You've either got people who deliberately flouted the restrictions, and then they thought, no, actually, I'll be safer back in the Isle of Man. They may have lots of money, and £1,000 to them, it's a discount stay at one of the island's most prestigious and well-known hotels. For other people who were told the borders are closing in a couple of days, get yourself back from Australia, from New Zealand if they're travelling, or wherever they may be in the world, they might not have the resources for those hiked up plane fares. They may not be able to get back in time, and now they're being punished in a way. They're not allowed to go straight back. They have to go through this raffle of when they will get back to the Isle of Man, and they have to stay in the Comis for 2 weeks. I definitely think, though, the U-turn on the closure of the borders and not allowing anybody in has proved to be, without doubt, the most contentious point of the Isle of Man government's strategy to tackle the coronavirus pandemic.